Welcome to One Mind Zen. Tonight's Dharma talk is given by Yong Sunim.
In this crowd, I guess don't have to say much to make the point about the Four Noble Truths being pretty essential teachings in Buddhism. We all get that dukkha, origins of dukkha, cessation, and the way to that is the Noble Eightfold Path. So we get that, and probably all of us here have read it a million times that suffering is may not be the best or the comprehensive translation of dukkha, dissatisfaction, distress, discomfort, that sort of thing. Though in case maybe you're not familiar with this, the fourfold formulation of the Four Noble Truths comes from ancient Indian medical practice, where you identify the illness, or you identify the symptoms, figure out their origins, figure out if it can be cured, and if so, how. And so here, of course, Siddhartha diagnosing the illness of dukkha that we all suffer from, and its origins and craving and grasping that cessation is possible, and that's again the Noble Eightfold Path is the cure. Um, so so I want to talk about the first noble truth, dukkha, but not the sort of dukkha, like, the bad things that people do to us or, arising from various circumstances, but rather dukkha as part of the human condition, the fundamental human experience. Some of you must know that I like occasionally reading stuff from neuroscience because here, I mean, probably every book I've ever read on neuroscience cites Buddhists at one point or another because we've been spending 2,500 years observing things like consciousness, just observing how the mind works, right? So there's a lot of data there, a lot of insights that they always point to. But I like looking at neuroscience as well because here we are like observing things, right? But there's all the stuff going on behind the scenes that we can't see or observe that neuroscientists can get at. So I like check out what they figured out coming from the other end of things. Well, there's this one evolutionary neuroscientist, so like Antonio Damasio, and what he's written a lot about is the evolution of a sense of self. So a relevant topic. And he sees that he argues, or you know, studying like different, evolution of organisms and so forth, and the sense of self, figures that the key thing in the development of sense of self, in terms of its evolution, wasn't consciousness but feeling, and that he sees that the sense of self resides really in the torso. This is where so much of the crucial sorts of feeling is based. And so through feeling things, we locate ourselves as the center of our experiences. So, you get just, feeling your skin, right? You get this bounded experience in the world. And so, and all the directional senses, they're pointing back to that bounded experience. And so here we all are as the center of the cosmos. And that this creates a boundary between self and other. So I am hungry. So that feeling, the hunger feeling, it's a literal feeling. I am hungry, or it is threatening me. Right. So get the sense of separation. Um, and also, and so this applies to dogs, anything that has a sense of self, right? It's not just dukkha is not just for people, for humans. He also talks about that system there with feeling as a homeostatic system, where that we possess a whole bunch of systems, he argues, that are sort of like thermostats. If the temper you wanted a certain temperature in the house, and if it drops too low, the furnace kicks on and warms it up. It gets too hot, the air conditioning kicks on, brings it back to where you want to be. So this feeling of hunger arises, creates this distress. You go and you do something about it, eat, brings it back up to base level, or maybe in like some joy. Maybe you overeat and you create a new form of discomfort, and then you just got to sit around and wait for it to digest and go away to bring it back. Thirst. sexual craving, like you name it, like there's all like dozens probably of these different systems all operating the same time. And so you got all these shifts going on in the homeostatic system, creating all sorts of distresses and pleasures. Um, and this is so think about the skandhas, right? The five skandhas. This is how, which I mean, I think are one of the most important observations or models that early Buddhists came up with. Form, feeling tones, perception, habit patterns, consciousness. And so think about the feeling tones skandha, right? That there's um, which is like that the root of the emergence of craving. So this feeling tone, this is pleasurable, neutral, not pleasurable, right? There's those three that we're taught in the Satipatthana Sutra to look for and observe, which of those three is going on at any moment. So you think about those feeling tones. It seems like the skandhas were like with the teaching of the skandhas, they're sort of observing a similar sort of thing that Damasio is then observing as well. That it's not just the same word feeling being used. I mean, talk about not quite the same thing, but you think about that. This feeling tones like, oh, okay, here's distress, here's neutral, here's this pleasurable thing. It can be in terms of hunger. Oh, here's this distress, and oh, I ate that. That's real good, right? It's constant fluctuation. You got all these things going on at the same time. And so if we look at those little distresses that occur, with hunger or whatever, so here, I mean, those little distresses count as dukkha, right? And so, I mean, dukkha is our constant companion, and thank goodness that it is, right? Because why did all those things like hunger and thirst develop? Well, to make us go out and do something about it so we don't die, right? Or a sex drive, right? So that we reproduce. I mean, these are really fundamental things. Without them, they evolved because they're helpful to keep us alive and to keep us procreating, right? And so that those constant series of little, the feeling tones going on, this constant dukkha, inherent in any being that has a sense of self. Um, and so, I think about First Noble Truth in this way. It's not a statement of, well, I mean, we all, all of us here get this. It's not life is suffering, right? We get that, but it's also not this banal recognition that like, oh, people do really horrible things to each other, or oh, I bumped my arm and that hurts, right? It's that it's actually the First Noble Truth. It's actually this incredibly profound insight into the experience of any beings with a self, that it is fundamental to the experience, the experience of self. Um, and of course, this isn't just a sort of theory like, oh, isn't that interesting, right? But I think examining those constant flux, like again, the Satipatthana Sutra tells us, go look for observe the feeling tones and which of the three kinds that it is. So in the like the seven limbs of awakening, right? First one's mindfulness. The second one is investigation, right? Go and investigate. Don't just observe like, oh, I'm hungry, right? It's, investigate where the feeling tone's going on. Where does this come from? How am I responding to this? And so if we come to see even these small daily, this constant sort of dukkha, um, really investigating this, that it is something personal to experience, to investigate, and whether it's these more things that really sorts of dukkha that should be translated as suffering, or this more sort of constant thing, recognizing this as our constant experience, this then can be on the basis for stronger empathy with other folks, or for really convincing experience to really take refuge in the three jewels, recognizing that the other refuges are insufficient, and that it's the three jewels are the satisfactory refuge because of this. The fundamental nature of having a self is so fundamentally tied to dukkha. And so, of course, this investigation, this can become the springboard for the intense um, commitment that's necessary for awakening.